for the tennis court, but again, as I mentioned, because of the placement of these two trees, we can't put it there, but that would have been great natural screening had we been able to do it. The last thing we want to emphasize is that this variance preserves a very nice heritage oak. While the two oaks in the back that I've referenced are much bigger, this third tree that's located right here is still quite nice. It's 35 feet tall and provides very good screening between our house here and the neighbor's house here. And so without that tree, our two houses will essentially be looking at each other. And we can only keep that tree intact by going with variance. That's a good segue into what our backup option is should you deny the variance. That backup option is also described in the documents that you have, and that would be under a special structures permit. If we were to move the court back to the front lot line, as the town planners have suggested, what that would require is removal of that third heritage oak tree. That places a burden not only on us, but also on our southerly neighbors because we lose that screening. And this is really one of the reasons that the special structures permit is our least preferred option. Additionally, what this does is it starts to push the court further back into the yard. And already our lot here is narrow and deep. And by pushing a tennis court beyond the house in this direction, we start to infringe on the width of our backyard. And we feel that that impairs not only the beauty, but also the value of this lot. So to summarize, we feel our lot has more than one unique attribute that indeed creates special circumstances which would support approval of a variance. This variance would not burden our neighbors or the public. It would not create a special privilege because the characteristics of our lot are fairly unique and not common in most other ATHERTON parcels. Importantly, granting the variance would also save a beautiful heritage oak in accordance with the town's general plans, and it would enhance the value of our property because it would allow us to maximize the width of our backyard. The backup option through the special structures permit, which is not our preferred option, would require the unfortunate removal of a heritage oak, and we and others that we've talked to feel would impinge on the beauty, function, and value of our land. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions of the applicant?
Very nice presentation.
Did you haven't finished yet?
We have this is John Toya, an architect from San Francisco.
Well, I told your wife that I was a little puzzled that you were willing to accept the 55 by 110 foot court.
She claims I want a smaller course so I don't have to run around as much.
Well, you look fit enough that you can take the full size. But seriously, I guess as a tennis player, I almost find it immoral to have an undersized court. I'm sure you're going to be satisfied with this.
Well, we don't have much of a choice. I mean, ideally, we would build a regulation court that I think is 60 by 120. This is right, 55 by 110. I've played, in fact, I've played most of the time on a sub-regulation court now. That's about the same size. And I don't notice too much of a difference. The problem, you know, if we wanted to go longer in length, then we would push further than 30 feet in front. So we were trying to minimize how much we go into that front lot line. And as it is, we're still quite close to that third oak tree, only about 4 feet off. But the arborists felt that with it being an immature tree, it would still be able to adapt to a court movement. And then the width, you know, because our lot is narrow and deep, having a wider court would make our building envelope even narrower, unfortunately.
Well, you could play singles on it, it's 51, but do you play singles?
I play singles and doubles.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any public commentary? Not? Close that section of our hearing and go to the commissioners. Paul, you're looking away, so I'll go to Carol.
Okay. I visited the lot on Monday morning. The lot is cleared and ready to go. Thought a lot about this, particularly where that tree is we're talking about. As I understand it, the proposed home will be 2 stories. The adjacent home is also 2 stories. I thought about it, the more I thought I would rather trade a variance on the proposed 30-foot setback, or 30 foot in front of the house, for a tree. And so that's where I came down. I would accept the variance and save the tree.
Rebecca?
Initially, when I looked at it, I thought that Plan B would be the preferred plan. However, I guess I'm won over by the arguments of the owner. I do remember thinking that, you know, the unusual shape of the funnel, as he calls it in the front, that it does help protect the tennis court from the exterior of the lot. So I guess I'm now in favor of the variance.
I mean, I sort of, I don't agree that, you know, it sounds at this point like it's sort of an argument of where should the tennis court go, but there's no right to build a tennis court on a piece of property. I mean, it's not, do we approve the variance or do we approve the special structures permit? You know, as our illustrious chairman has pointed out on numerous occasions, you know, sometimes you can't build a tennis court on a lot. So I don't think it's a choice between one or the other. So I would rather look at them independently. And looking at the variance first, I mean, a variance, at least in my view, is a very constrained right, and it's got, you know, a statutory basis, and it's got very specific findings. And the first is that there's basically special circumstances in accordance, you know, vis-a-vis anything else. And although I thought the presentation was great, I mean, I thought you had some great arguments, but the fact remains it's a flag lot in Atherton where there's many flag lots that share, you know, the basic form of this lot. And so when I think of the special circumstances that would justify a variance, it's because, you know, your lot goes along a riverway and therefore it joins 3 streets, or it's got a very unusual shape or slope or something. You know, it doesn't mean just because this lot isn't exactly the same as some other lot, therefore it justifies it. So for me, I agree with the staff report that it just doesn't meet condition number 1 of the requirement for a variance, which is something special about this lot that would prevent that the homeowner from enjoying the same sort of developmental standards that others do. I mean, the tennis court could go in all kinds of locations. Yes, it runs into trees, it runs into other things, but it's not because of the shape of the property. So I don't think that I would support the variance, because I don't think it meets item number 1. And as a result, it almost by definition would trigger number 2, and that it would be granted a special privilege, inconsistent with others. So I would not support the variance. In terms of the special structures permit, taking it separately from the tree, the special structures permit, this is a case where you almost benefit from having a flag lot, because I think the purpose of the requirement that you be 30 feet behind the front building line is because most lots front a street and they want structures in the back, like we've sort of discussed earlier. I think the fact that it's a flag lot benefits you, and therefore I don't have a problem with, and the code also provides the avenue for providing a special structures permit to build the court there. And then it boils down to the tree, and that's where you have a double-edged sword, where you, in arguing for the first one, you're arguing against the second one. If you argue that you want the variance because the tree is great and you don't want to take it down, then it hurts you on the back end. because you just argued that it's a nice tree and you shouldn't take it down. But, you know, on balance, you know, based on the arborist report and the support for taking the tree down, I would support option number 2, but not because it was a choice between the two, but because I think the second one is justified in its own right.
You sound like a lawyer. I find myself a little puzzled, only because you're asking for an undersized court, and I find that a little difficult to accept when you're developing a property. I do think that there are special circumstances on this particular property. I live on a flag lot, but I don't have all the rears of other properties up against me. I have 2 sides. I have one end at the back. I have 2 rear lots from different streets. The unique thing about this property is that, as I looked around, it did you have a tennis court on one side, you have the back there against what would be your sideline, and in the front, what I call the front, and is behind your front setback, I think there's a pool house and so forth. So that whole area is used for recreation. And just as we use part of the Welch agreement, or application, I should say, at least I did, it was because of the use of the adjacent land, I would have to support your request for having only 30 feet. I would rather have you increase it or decrease the to 20, so at least you get 120 feet. And if you're satisfied with signals, which you will soon lose your zest for as you age, that would be fine. So I would support your application. Now I have, so that concludes it. There's a motion. It needs to be done.
Can I ask one question? I mean, we can't here and now try to, I mean, we've only asked for 30 in the written documents, and you're suggesting that we do something a little more than 30 to make it regulation.
I'm one vote out of 4 here tonight. You can ask for a continuation, which you may not wish to do. I have no idea how the other commissioners feel about it. I think it's, my personal feeling is that it's a good location, given the activities on the adjacent properties. And having a tennis court adjacent to our property, it isn't that noisy. Of course, my neighbors may not play tennis enough. They play basketball on Sunday mornings. But I would think the only way, if you wanted to go, is to ask for a continuation, where you can reassess your situation. But I don't know whether the other commissioners would be along.
No, we'll stick with the 110.
I see your wife nods now. You're like the rest of us. We're told. May we have a motion in one form or another?
See if I can put one together here. I move the Atherton Planning Commission approve the variance to allow a tennis court in the front yard setback 30 feet in front of the main house. And conditions where variance can be met. That is, there are special circumstances relating to this property, its size and its length. And that because the tennis court is located adjacent to neighbors' properties, a tennis court and a pool house, that it is not granting a special privilege, and therefore the condition for a variance can be met.
Did you also want to mention the surroundings adjacent to higher density properties?
At the rear of
Thank you.
the higher density properties. Thank you very much.
I second it.
Any further discussion by all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those against?
Aye.
Nay? 3-1, your application for variance is approved.
Thank you very much.
You have 10 days? Bill? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think this
I
concludes.
think we should, maybe just to close up the record here, the applicant can either formally withdraw their request for the other 2 items, or you could formally deny them.
Formally,
Would you like to formally
Full.
withdraw?
withdraw. Formally withdraw.
Okay, the applicant has formally withdrawn their request for the special structure permit in the Heritage Street.
Okay.
Before we adjourn, I've got a question for staff on another matter. It's not on the agenda, but where are we on our Heritage Street?
Waiting for a little room on the agenda, then we'll bring it to you. I'm hoping the next meeting, it may be, Andrea, looking a little lighter for our next meeting so far.
Yes.
Great. And I'll inform the tree committee as well.
Could you send out the items earlier,
Sure.
giving the commissioners to take a look at it?
And what we had last talked about, I think, was trying to come up with some key topics that we wanted to discuss, so I don't think we had at this point some specific language, but we need a little more direction on some key topics.
What are the
And then we had a
commissioners?
couple other cleanup ordinances we were looking at as well, and we talked about the accessory buildings, that we need to bring that back as well.
Any further questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Why'd you make the motion?
Make a motion to adjourn. Meeting of, what is it, August 22nd.
Could you second
I'll second.
All right.
that? Okay, all those in favor?
All right.
Meeting is adjourned. Sorry.
I know.